Good evening. Looks like it's 6 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Monday, October 21st, 2024. Can we call the roll?
Commissioner Hawley.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Urbani.
Here.
Commissioner Barnes.
Here.
Commissioner Chorin.
Here.
Alderman Parrish.
Here.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Here.
And Commissioner Stoker is absent tonight.
All right, we've got a quorum. First agenda item is approval of the meeting minutes from 9/23/24.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Sorry, I'm taking my glasses on and off. I can see better close up without them, and then I've got to look around with them on. My age is setting in, and it's being documented as we speak within the city. Next agenda item is Pinnacle Engineering Group, LLC, for Kitty Academy. The applicant is seeking conditional use grant, building and site plan, and minor request for sign waiver approval to allow for a new 12,000 square foot building for a child care facility for the parcel located at 10921 North Port Washington Road. And this is, first item is we'll go into a public hearing.
Move to go into public hearing.
Motion and a second to go into public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now in favor, we are now in public hearing. I've got Jane Chavaco is in support and does wish to speak, saying that they would like to know of the timing of the final plat and when sewer water will be extended to the existing properties.
That's the wrong item.
Oh, that's Point Real Estate. Sorry, wrong one. Anybody like to speak on this item? All right, looking for a motion to close.
Motion to close public hearing.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed.
What, you don't mind, what public hearing? Because you started to talk about some other property about.
Sorry, I made a mistake and I read the wrong card. We're in a public hearing for Pinnacle Engineering Group for the Kitty Academy.
Okay, because I apologize for the interruption, I did put a card in, and I got mixed up. So, I did put a card in to speak.
I've got one card, and that's the only one that I've got. So if there's one missing, please bring it to Kim.
Table right here.
I thought it was maybe part of the applicants. You can come up here and speak.
Okay. Yeah, I set it up there. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Okay.
interruption. My name is Mark Haslam. I own the Feedbag Pet Supply, which will be essentially across the street from the facility, because I believe the facility is behind the Arby's and all that. I am not opposed to the daycare. But to help understand, or help maybe me articulate what my concern is, I was wondering if I could approach the council and just hand a sheet of paper. And I want to give, I believe, you guys at daycare? Okay, I'll give you one. I want to be fair to everybody. I'll let the gal.
Sure. Okay.
And again, I apologize. Hopefully we got enough copies. Okay, and I apologize coming in blue jeans, but I spent all day putting a 3-horsepower motor in for our aquatic section. My biggest concern is, you'll see on the first sheet, you'll see where we have the feed bag on one side of the street, and we have like the Arby's and the new daycare going in. And along between the pavilion, on the south side of the pavilion and on the north side of the feed bag is a boulevard. And that boulevard controls essentially over 30 stores. And you'll see on the second page of your sheet, this was taken at 4:30 this afternoon. There was a lot of traffic. And my biggest concern is, if you look at like where I put down letter A, on traffic coming southbound on Port Washington, that's gonna turn in either into the boulevard for the pavilion, or they make U-turns. So that holds up all that traffic, because you don't know if they're making a turn into the boulevard or a U-turn. There's been several accidents at this intersection. And I don't want to point any fingers like, well, it's because of development and all that. That's the nature of development, okay? And then we had, I don't know who, if it was the state or Ozaki County, put in a left turning lane on the northbound Port Washington, turning into the Landmark Bank / Arby's area. And now, when you have a car there, trying to turn into, I don't want to pick on Arby's, but I'll just pick it because everyone knows where Arby's is. You turn it into Arby's, somebody's trying to come out of Landmark, somebody's trying to get out of the pavilion, and now, what do you typically have on a daycare center? Between 4:30 and 6. I don't know the exact times, but that's usually because people are coming home, they're rushing, trying to pick up their kids. So the intersection is going to become very, very, very busy. And I'm really concerned that we're going to have a lot more accidents there. I mean, I can't tell you, it goes at least 3 to 4 times a week. We can hear inside our facility people laying on their horns and screeching the brakes. We're waiting, we all kind of like wait for the bang. And it just, the intersection is getting too many cars going through it without it being controlled. And I'll be upfront with you, I don't think a controlled intersection would be the right thing either, because I think it would end up backing up traffic all the way down the boulevard, all the way into Sendex. So I don't think a controlled intersection is the right thing, because we got a lot of controlled intersections on Port Washington already. What I would like to propose is that, because it's a less used, I'll say, crossway, is to divert the child daycare center traffic behind Landmark all the way to the road that has the car wash on it, and have them go through that, because that's linked on the east side of the road is Stein Gardens. And Stein Gardens has like multiple egress and ingresses, and quite frankly, Stein Gardens is busy. I don't want to beat them up, but they're busy on, you know, your major holidays and major Mother's Day and everything else. Most of the time, they're a little bit slower. And where the boulevard that's by us is busy by all the pavilion traffic, obviously our traffic, things like that. So I'd like to see if we can somehow reroute the traffic to that one road that just has the car wash on it, because they can go across Port Washington, get into the northbound lane. They can also turn right and go on the southbound lane. And you're not in contention with a ton of other cars. You gotta remember, that boulevard that's between my business, the feed bag, and the pavilion, there's 30 stores in the pavilion. And they all seem, well, I shouldn't say all, a large percentage comes through that boulevard. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times even people go down the wrong side of the boulevard. I mean, that's my biggest concern. It's not the daycare center. I think it would be no matter what you put there. That would be the traffic is my concern. It's not the daycare.
Great, thank you.
Unless it's a doggy daycare, then I would push back. You know, but that would be my only concern, and I believe there is a road behind Landmark that allows you to divert the traffic there. But I just wanted to voice my concern, and I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we'll address that in the staff comments and talk about what our options are. So I think we have a motion and a second to close public hearing. He snuck in just under the wire, which is a good thing, so thank you for coming forward and saying something. Anybody else wish to speak on this item before we formally close public hearing? All right. All those in favor of closing public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? All right. We're now taking up that item.
I guess before I get to the report, I have the ortho up of that area, just to kind of give some site context. Basically, the facility will be going into this location in the back here. And then, as you recall, at our last meeting, we approved the concept plan amendment to split this in two. So this lower part will remain vacant. In terms of access, I mean, this is a PUD. We kind of established access a long time ago with this project. We have an access point to the furthest to the north. This is right in, right out. There's cross access through here. This is the main lane I think he was speaking to. There's also a lane here that goes down, and then that basically just kind of comes out Port Washington Road next to the car wash, which he was speaking to. I think what he's asking is to cut this off somehow, and I don't think we'd support that. I think the way this is laid out, it gives any of the customers at any of the different facilities multiple ways to get in and out in case there is a backlog. So if the childcare facility is here, they would have the ability to go out this way as a right in, right out. They'd have the ability to come through the middle, and they'd have the ability to come through here. So we're providing 3 access points for this development and for all the other developments in the area. And I guess I will also say that this is a county highway. We don't really have jurisdiction over this road. So they approved the curb cuts at the time when this was originally established, so I'm not sure if it'd be up to them to determine whether any improvements are needed to that road. So before I get into the report, is there any questions about this access issue that I can address before I get into the actual meat of the report?
Alderman Parrish.
For the Port Washington Road corridor study that Harwood Associates is working on right now as we speak, nor has it been approved yet, so we can certainly, we had a business owner express some legitimate concerns. It certainly is a very busy, uncontrolled turn, so everything he's saying is correct. I would be curious what our consultant would say, and maybe we even did something already, and we just haven't. Did we make a change to this entrance point?
No, we didn't. We didn't make any changes. We only addressed a couple of different island locations. One was at the Culvers. We closed off the Culvers Island, and we also asked to close off the ones by Goodyear and by the Baymont Hotel. Those were both denied by council. So the only change to the cross section of Port Road is going to be the one at Culvers. So we didn't look at this one at all. I'm not sure exactly what you do here other than putting in a light, which I don't think it warrants the traffic, and that's something maybe Cole could weigh in on. I'm not sure how that would work.
Yeah,
But
I don't know either. I think it's more, let's just ask the consultant to take one last look at it, and maybe it's the only thing we can do is some additional signage. There's nothing wrong with just double checking that there's nothing else we can do about the shape of the intersection at that point. It is an odd shape. It's kind of a free-for-all.
I mean, we can have him look at it from an aesthetic standpoint, but he's not a traffic engineer. So if there was something we wanted to do a little bit more elaborate than that, we'd have to get somebody else involved or get the county involved. The project for Port Washington Road was to try to pick spots that we felt were troubled intersections. At this time, this one did not raise to that level at the time when we started, and there was no concern about it throughout that process. So this would be coming in kind of at the end of that process, basically. So. But we can talk to the county and see if they have any plans or any concerns, or if there's any incident data there that we can maybe look at to address the issue in the future. I just don't think we can really tie it to this project because the PUD basically showed the road network.
No, I agree. It's separate from the project, and we haven't gotten into the presentation yet. I think the applicant has a bunch to say as well.
Jack, the request is that we consider a no U-turn sign at that intersection. So as we're reviewing the Port Washington Road corridor, as well as considering reaching out to the county, if we couldn't inquire as to whether that would be appropriate there or not. And regardless of this business going in or not, I think that would be a reasonable place to request that. They can make a U-turn just the next intersection down, no problem. Come back through where there's less traffic trying to get in and out of a busier complex.
Yeah, that we could request.
Yeah.
That's not an issue.
All right, great. Commissioner Chorn.
I think it'd be a strong suggestion that the daycare just inform the clients that there's multiple ways of getting out. I mean, give them information so should they run into a problem, they've got other options.
Commissioner Barnes.
I'll just speak as a former traffic engineer. I concur with what the current existing condition is. I'm sensitive. I understand what you're saying. But I think, number one, a signal would not be warranted here, even with the new traffic volumes from a numbers and collision basis, et cetera. And then the other is we need to be aware that a sign such as a do not no U-turn, I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but the reality is that if somebody wants to make a U-turn, despite a sign, they're going to make it. And I'm not saying that's correct, but it's real.
Or even like 4 to 6 p.m.
Yeah, that's
You know,
really
just to
comes down to
kinda-
what the county's going to allow. And I know the county's been a little bit more amenable to putting no U-turn signs. The state really, they prefer people doing U-turns. I mean, you can actually do a legal U-turn at Port and Mequon Road, which seems kind of crazy, but it's allowed. But the county's been a little bit more restrictive on that as you go up and down the corridor. They do have some areas, but we can ask them but it's still their jurisdiction.
Okay. Additional feedback? The applicant, do you have anything to say? Doesn't sound like there's any real objections to what the plan is. The majority of the discussion is just on the traffic, which isn't tied to your application, one way or the other.
Yeah, if you don't mind here, if you can hear me.
Sure, yep.
Mark Seidel, Pinnacle Engineering Group, 20725 Watertown Road in Brookfield. So I just want to speak real quick to the traffic item just to give some color and some background. So I was part of the design team that did the original, I'll call it overall development package. And as part of that, and I think it was 2018 or 2019, a traffic study, a rather comprehensive traffic study was undertaken and submitted to the county for review. So just to give a little bit of clarity, this back parcel was once slated for an athletic club of 30,000 square feet in size, which is a lot higher density and a lot higher trip generation than any call it childcare facility. So at the time that was submitted and approved with the county, and improvements were made to Port Road. So I just want to throw that out there that, you know, the traffic study was complete and has a lot higher density user than what's proposed today.
Great. Staff has conditions on this for approval. Are you amenable to all the conditions listed by staff?
I think one that we'd like to discuss is the front facade under the portico chair, where we show the wood grain lap siding that's coming down the front on the, I believe, Jack, you were asking about having brick coming up near the doorway underneath the portico chair.
No, I talked to the owner a little bit about this. I think there's a little confusion. Actually, my recommendation is for this whole middle section to be brick instead of the siding. There's a brick ledge that kind of shows at the bottom, and it transitions into a siding about at the same level as the rest of the brickwork. I just think as a focal point and an entryway into the facility, I just felt that this would be more appropriate to be a primary material like brick. So I think they're objecting to that, basically. I'll let Marty chime in if he likes.
Commissioner Chorn has thoughts on this.
Well, I hate to
Can you talk into the mic a little bit
hate
closer?
to argue with you, Jack, but I think the siding looks better. I mean, it's a different material. It's a highlight. It's a focal point, right there, and I think it looks attractive.
Like I said, with architecture, it's always subjective.
Commissioner Barnes.
Yeah, one other question that I had was, I know one of the common challenges of a facility like this can be the parental drop-off and pickup and the traffic routing through the site and backing up, if you will. Here, we've got plenty of internal roadway, but I guess my question is, because I didn't see anything in here, are you planning to sign or show it as a one-way only routing for parental drop-off? And how's that all going to work in terms of what I could foresee as just some occasional, some block or congestion at morning drop-off or those kind of things?
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for taking up our project today. I wanted to touch base on Water Skiddy Academy first and answer your questions, if I may. We basically are a national franchise, which is predominantly more on the East Coast. There's a lot of kiddie academies in Illinois, but we were the first one in city of Brookfield in state of Wisconsin to have a kiddie academy. We provide unique way of childcare where we just don't have a babysitting or a drop-off place for kids. Our motto is basically that a parent, when they leave their kid at our facility, they feel that their kid is going to learn something, and of learning, we make sports as a big part of our learning part. So essentially, it's not just kids coming and playing, which they play at home as well. It's just that they are addicted to devices. But in our case, we are providing that platform where the kids are actually getting into early into sports, and that's a lot of emphasis is on sports and activities. So we have a play area outside as well as inside a building, by which parents can kind of feel that their kids are learning through play and kind of getting to know and learn things. So speaking of that, the way we had in Brookfield was we had a turnaround as the way the entrance shows, and the highlight is that we mark by arrows how the way the traffic flows within the facility. So safety of parents and kids has always been a prime concern, and we in city of Brookfield we are right off on Capitol Drive. So yes, there is the traffic is fast on Capitol Drive, while we don't have a slow down lane, but parents have known how to get onto the shoulder and get onto our facility. So and Capitol Drive is DOT, it's a state highway. So over here I hear what the concerns were. So we have tried to address in whatever ways, just as Mark said, the study was done in past for a larger facility over here, but in our case we have more than one way for parents to come in and out. The flow of traffic would be the way it's the turnaround would be, that is they come in, they come from the top and then come down and go to the bottom, drop in their kids. The portico share provides a great place for especially parents of infants, where in rain and snow they don't have to take the kids outside in a car seat and get drenched with their kid, as well as having the kid drenched. So that's been a great thing for our parents in Brookfield, and we've learned through that. So when they come, we don't allow the parents to use that as a parking space. It's more like come in, drop off, and then move out. So it's like a moving place. It's not a parking place. Parking, anyone who wants to do, we highly encourage people to go and park in the parking spot. If they want to meet our staff, talk to our staff, then that's park in your parking spot and then come in. That will not be a parking place. So the traffic would flow only in one direction. Of course, we would like everyone to follow traffic, but just as you mentioned, people, even if there is a no U-turn sign, they still do U-turns. So I have seen people who drive Ubers and Lyft and are delivery guys from other places, they drive the wrong place every time. That's a peak annoyance, but you just can't tell people why are you driving in a wrong direction when there are arrows showing it. So those are things, if I may.
And thanks. So that covers what I was, asking about, but I guess I'm still a little concerned about, call it the drop off in the morning or picking up, and despite the one-way marked pattern, I know in a lot of areas parents like to take their kids into the building, and so it's one of those things where a habit develops and congestion begins
So
in
we
the
are very
routing. And I
particular
guess
about
my
that.
question is how do you intend to address that? What I'm going to guess could be a likelihood, even over time. Sure, there's early conditions, but then over time, that there's congestion in terms of getting in.
So with the parents, I can assure you on that part, we want safety of all our parents. We say that every kid is important in our daycare. It's not any parent is special, any kid is special, right? It's everyone follows the rules. So we always, when they enroll, we have on the very first day, we let them know this is where the parking spot is, this is how you turn around, this is what exits you are going to use. We tell the parent about it. So there's no room for error where a parent was going to come and say, hey, I was not aware about it. We tell them how we can make this place a safe place for kids. And that's the whole point of spending this much, where we have clear signs of showing it to the parents. So yes, we can tell our parents, but people who drive Uber or who drop off, I can't control them. They are not going to get that class from us or emails from us, because we reiterate too every week. We, in fact, even tell parents we don't want anyone parking overnight in a facility, because if you do so, let us know your plates, because we don't want stranded cars in our facility or any such thing of that sort.
Well, and when I drop off my son, I park in the
You gotta
parking stall.
talk, you gotta talk into the microphone, and then if the
Sorry.
button's, if it's not lit, you gotta hit the button.
Oh, she's green. Can you hear me?
Yep, now I can.
When I drop my son off, I park the car, I have his bag, I have him, you know, so that's how I prefer doing it. Having options and having that flow with the drop off for infants or car seats, so just having flexibility that way. But each parent's different, you know, with dropping off your son or daughter coming into their classroom, having that parking field, and when we were looking at the different quantity of parking stalls itself, that it will feed, with daycares having, you know, the influx between, you know, the 6 a.m. to 8, and with pickups, so you have to accommodate for that. So with having that and having the covered portico share and the path in the parking lot, you shouldn't have any real issues. There's facilities that we've done where you don't have drop-offs and portico shares in front too. So each facility is different. Every parent's different, but a lot of parents like come in, drop off, talk to the teachers, but also get to work. So
Message would be just if there's a commitment for staff, it that becomes a problem, that you're prepared to keep things
I think
moving.
if there's a line, there's going to be plenty of parents talking with this guy before he gets the jack. So
Okay. Commissioner Parrish.
Thank you. Thanks again to the applicant for proposing this wonderful project. Looking forward to hopefully having you invest in our city. We have a lot of great stuff going on, and this will complement it well. I have not heard, this is my district as well, District 6. I have not heard from any of my residents. They've all gotten the card. You mentioned a fitness center was proposed there. I don't recall that, but it does remind me that that is a large piece of land back there, and someone could have proposed a very large office building or large structure back there that would have had a lot more traffic, a lot more noise, been more disruptive. And so I'm pleased with it. I think I hear all the time that there's a waiting list for daycares, and I don't have concerns. And I think it's great to see how this development has progressed from, used to be a nursing home way back in the day. And so now it's been subdivided. It's created a lot of increment. I hope no TIF is being utilized for this project. But I would just say that I'd be in support of it.
Am I hearing a motion?
I
one,
have
one quick question.
We can still discuss after a motion, yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I feel like we skipped over the staff report because we started talking about traffic, and then I didn't know if Jack wanted to make a report or not. So that was one
I mean,
thing.
unless you had more questions, I guess.
Well, no, not necessarily, but I noticed. I have more questions. So
Do you want a staff report? We can just have Jack
I didn't
give
know
us
if
a
we
brief.
needed to highlight. No, I don't want to belabor it. I think we kind of skipped right from the traffic question into
Sure.
our discussion. We do not have to do it. I just didn't know if there's anything to highlight. I have a couple of questions regardless.
Jack, just to be diligent, is there anything that you want to highlight?
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with some of the recommendations.
Sure.
There's a sign waiver for a couple of signs. We're only recommending that the one waiver be granted for the height of the main sign. I can get to that page. I think I have to find it.
And call out the second sign if you could, please.
Is that the community starts here?
Yes. So,
That's just a tagline. I don't think that's us.
well, it fits, and I'll show you the rendering. So this is what they're requesting. It shows the main sign located on the facade and then the sign here. So our code only allows one sign. So this would be a secondary waiver sign. And then they're also looking for size waiver for this sign. It's about 13 square feet larger than what's allowed. And then they're looking for a height waiver. The only thing we're recommending there is the height waiver because I think it would maybe be a little low. It might get blocked by that facade if people are driving in. But we don't see any hardship to the reason why they need a larger sign. It's really not really visible for anywhere. I understand, speaking with the developer, I think he submitted an application today for our next meeting to actually have a shared monument sign with one of the properties on Port Washington Road to get access, to give some visibility on Port Washington Road. So I don't think there's a necessary reason to have that larger sign, and then this sign is, again, superfluous. And it may not seem, anything crazy to have that slogan there, but we can't regulate content either, so that could say anything it wanted to. So we're not supportive of that secondary sign as well. So that was one issue. The other issue I just wanted to make sure we're clear on is that you know, the narrative speaks to the use of this facility by other people within the community, and this is only, there's 3 pickleball courts and a soccer field out there. We want to make sure that these are used by just the patrons of the daycare. If they want to open this up to any type of other activities to the community, they would need a separate conditional use for outdoor fitness center. So I just want to make sure that was clear, because there was some reference to that in the code. There's also some lighting and landscaping that needs to be addressed, relatively minor stuff. And then regarding the TIF, I think the developer is actually requesting some incentive through the Economic Development Board, because there was some infrastructure left from the old Jewish home site. There's a We Energies transformer or main line that runs through this, so that has to be rerouted. So there are some costs that are TIF eligible. So I think he'll be coming to our Economic Development Board meeting in next week. So, but that's coming from the developer, not specific to this daycare. So other than that, I just wanted to if there's any other questions, I think you wanted to add a condition about the no U-turn sign per Ozaki County allowance, and then we're removing the brick off the front facade. And is there any other conditions we want to modify at this point?
Do you want the no U-turn as a condition, or do you want it just as, I mean, I don't know that we
I
can
would make it as a
condition
condition per approval by the Ozaki County. So if Ozaki County says, no, we don't want it there, we don't want to have to come back for that. So
Agreed,
it would be
agreed.
up to their jurisdiction.
Okay. So knowing that we've got the no U-turn, we've got some discussion items on the facade, and then we've got definitely some additional questions coming up here. So Commissioner Schaefer.
I'm wondering if the neighbors knew that this, I don't know that, I'm out of the daycare phase, so I could just be unaware, but I don't know if we have other facilities that have weekend hours, and this one appears that it would be open on the weekends. And so I'm wondering if, Alderman Parrish, you said you didn't hear from any residents. It's different, right? So you're going to have a different, kid noise doesn't bother me, it does bother some residents, and there is residential area that is in this vicinity. So I don't know that there's a question per se here, but I don't know that that would have been clear on the green postcard. It was really on you as as someone who
Right.
receives the postcard to go and look it up.
Yeah, we were concerned about that too. I do have the map up again just to show you the closest residential properties to this site is probably these condominiums in Whining Hollow, which are a good 400 feet away, and then there's a grass and tree buffer separating the two. So
Yeah.
not a lot of residents in close proximity, but our biggest concern was the noise coming from the outdoor play area, because the indoor, obviously the indoor stuff is not going to be an issue during the daytime or at night for that matter. But I was concerned about the usage of those facilities during after dark. So I added a condition saying that at dusk, the outdoor play area has to be stopped being used regardless if it's summer or winter, regardless of the timeline. They do show lighting out there, but it's not bright enough to actually use those courts. But I just want to make sure it was clear that we did not want pickleball or other noise going on after dusk in the summer or winter for that matter. So
Yeah, pickleball, man. People get
yeah, there's a lot of
they get hot about that. So you guys are aware of this, and we're all in agreement that that would be a condition that you would agree to?
Yes, so we intended to have the play facility anyway till dusk. We didn't want at dark. I mentioned that to Jack that in summer it's all the light is there until 8:30, so we would stop at 8. But in winter, I wouldn't want anyone to go out and play ball after 4:30.
4:30? Okay, thank you.
I have something which I would like to talk about signs, especially with related to what Bruce asked, if I may.
Sure. Let's give Commissioner Urbani a chance to speak first, and then you'll be next, okay?
So mine was related to what we were just talking about with sports after dark and about the limit at dusk. I'm actually going to stand up for kids playing until 8 p.m. because I know it's pickleball and it does make noise. However, the applicant's information said that there would be a maximum of 18 school-age kids within the facility. And really, I just don't think 18 kids, I think that's okay. I want them to be able to play. Dusk comes at 4:30 in the winter. Last winter, we hardly had any snow. They could have been outside. I would rather see kids outside as much as possible, and it sounds like that's your mission statement as well. I know pickleball is a tough one in this area, but at least letting them be outside. You said the other part was a soccer field.
Yes.
Soccer's a lot quieter than pickleball. I'm just gonna lodge my support to let the kids play until 8 p.m. per the original application.
Well, the only concern I'd have with that is right now, the lighting plan shows those areas lit about 2.5 to 3 foot candle average for that facility. That's not a lot of light. If you're gonna do pickleball or even soccer outside, you probably need 15 to 30 foot candles, which could have a big light issue. So I wanted to be clear that so they didn't come back in the future and say, okay, we need to illuminate this now because we can't meet our requirements of being open till 9 o'clock without the illumination. So we want to have the additional lighting. So I guess our staff prefers to keep it the way it is with the lower illumination levels and then just having it till dark, just to have any concerns over noise, because it's not just the balls making noise. The kids are yelling and screaming and things like that, which most of the time is okay, but a lot of people don't want to hear that.
I mean, 8 o'clock? 8 o'clock's pretty early.
Well, that's why we're here.
And then the lighting, I mean, adult eyes, kid eyes, the kids can see. I have no doubt of that. Anyway.
Okay. So we've discussed it, but we don't have a motion. Yes, sorry, you wanted to talk about the signs.
Yeah, so thank you, Nancy. Yes, the goal actually is to have the kids enjoy and get the advantage of sports. That's not what they get at home. And that's why we want parents to come and drop off and not think of it as just a child care where, you know what, just kids come in and they cry, and that's not what our goal is. So speaking of that, when Bruce brought up the point of parents and educating parents, our motto is clearly community begins here. We have a person from KD Academy Corporate as well who can speak to why and what that means, because that gets highlighted a lot in when we speak to our parents and we tell them about the safety and being inclusive. So the whole point being is we want it to be a community, just as Mr. Brian said, that you guys want us to be part of the city and get something like this, and that is what I personally feel. That's my passion. I want everyone to feel that this place belongs to them, and collectively we'll grow. It's not that, hey, we've got an average place where anyone can come in. Our client will be on the higher end clearly with what facilities we are providing, but that is not to say we don't support people from the low income background. We have other ways of helping them out too. So the goal over here will be the community begins here. The reason why we are asking that is we want that to be highlighted and let the parents know at the entrance. It's not an illuminated sign like the one which is the main logo, which is KD Academy KD Academy main sign, but it is more like just simply letters, and that's what we would like to be there on the wall, just as a highlight kind of thing. So if that counts as a big sign and if that becomes an issue, then yes.
And one thing to add, I can understand if it's like pickleball this way or something that's not, slogan, or I would never say the word cutesy, but it's the entry into the facility. So the other thought I just wanted to express with the larger sign, with asking for a larger than normal, going against the code, is how that logo is. You have smaller fonts underneath the bigger font. So it's not like Meyer, where you scale and you can see it. So you need a scale so you can actually see a little bit more on the bottom letters. So I think that was the thought process on scaling it. I don't think we're opposed, but when you're looking at that backdrop and that height that Jack was talking about, it fills in that area. It doesn't look like it's larger than it should be. If it gets a little bit smaller, then we might want to consider looking at different logos.
So what's your formal ask?
Just on the signage front,
'Cause
we were
we've
talking
got a
about
lot
the
of
height.
discussion, but we're not moving in a direction. I want to
Yep,
make sure
sorry.
that we
So
vote
with
on this
the-
tonight.
The signage requests on the height, we came to agreement on the size of the actual sign itself on the building, and then the second sign that,
How tall are the lower channel letters? I worked in signage for 10 plus years, so
8 inches? 8¼ inches.
Okay. I think you can go, I think you can, Jack, do you want to just talk about how sign size is calculated? Because I don't think the bottom letters are the biggest concern. I know that if you reduce those channel letters a little smaller, that it's going to get to some point where those channel lit letters won't be able to be produced and lit appropriately.
Yeah, for a sign, we take the smallest polygon around the signage. So in this case, you'd basically draw 2 polygons around each sign. And they're at 73.33 square feet. Our code is 60. So, I mean, they're only 13 square feet. I think you can do some other modifications to actually still make it work and still fit. I appreciate his concern about the fitting in the scale of the building, because we're going to look at another one later on this evening with the same issue. But, I mean, we're not talking about a major reduction here. It's only 13 square feet. And if you can get creative with your polygons, you may be able to get something pretty close to what they're showing right now.
Yeah, you could move them closer or do some other things. I think the sign can be reduced a little bit, and that was one of the questions that I had when reading the packet, and you know, this discussion kind of validated that. If that gets reduced just a little bit, it's going to essentially feel the same. You're not going for street frontage, you know, visibility. You've got access to that, you know, that separate road. People are going to be able to see your facility clearly based on your signage. You know, I would support the smaller size by staff. And then the tagline. So just to give you a little background, you know, freedom of speech is very important to us in America, and we take an oath here. You know, we you know, take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, at least as aldermen. And as a committee, we do the same thing. That has been pushed a lot lately as to what people deem as freedom of speech, and we've run into challenges on everything from subdivision entry signs and things like that. So when Mr. Zader mentions that it's kind of a challenge that we can't judge based on content, your first instinct is like, oh, it's just a tagline, it's a warm welcome. We're just simply, as a governing body, not allowed to do that, right? We can't comment on the content. We can't say that we like it. We can't pick winners or losers. So, you know, as we're voting tonight, it's not necessarily voting on whether or not we like the tagline there, whether we think it's a simple lettering and really easy to, you know, easy to agree with, right? We are voting based on, you know, the fact that it is a secondary sign, and we're making an exception, and what are we going to need to do on that corridor to be consistent with all the other business owners that come to us with similar requests, and using you as an example as to why we have 2 signs. So there's a little bit of a challenge there, and I'm going to ask the commission to, you know, consider that, but be very cognizant of, you know, freedom of speech and respectful of what we can and what we really can't talk about. It's going to be a little beaten around the bush, but I think we'll get that content out there. And, you know, we know that that's, you know, a concern of yours and you want to see that. I saw Commissioner Schaefer's hand up.
Yeah, I was going to try to make a motion, but just thinking of that tagline, I wonder if a way to address it might be to do a stencil. I'm assuming there's some sort of an interior, like a entryway, like a vestibule gathering spot. Maybe you do it on if there's a large wall there, and then people see it right away when they come in as well. Just, I know it's not what you asked for, but perhaps that's an alternative. But I was going to make, we can still discuss after this, but I was going to attempt to make a motion to approve per staff's conditions with a couple of changes, one of which, so we were going to potentially give on the brick, which is condition, help me
Actually,
out, friends.
I don't think I put it in there, so.
It's not in there.
I think
Well,
that
there you
was-
go.
Yeah, so you know,
Look at that. Okay.
I was questioning whether you were going to approve it or not. Maybe that's why I didn't put it in there.
Yeah.
Then I think the only other condition that we spoke
There
about
was
would
U-turn
be
sign in
consider-
the
yeah,
facade.
reaching out to Ozaki County regarding the potential use of a no U-turn sign at that intersection and seeing how they, and then, so yes. I think that's my motion.
So,
The other part was related to talking with the consultants about that space, but that's not really a condition, that's more of a add-on.
Got a question, and then I've got the applicant with their hand up.
Question, since there was no mention in the staff recommendations in changing that material to brick, would a passing or agreement with the motion mean that it stays
Per the plan.
per the plan?
If
Yep.
you want to just call out that it can be the facade in your motion, just to clarify completely from discussion, that would be great, and then we'd get an easy
Sort of a
second, I
friendly
think.
amendment would be that, the materials that were recommended by the applicant would be what we would move forward with.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Partially there. Anything I can help you with?
Yeah, I just want to clarify the additional condition regarding the U-turn sign. I think I'd just like to discuss that a little bit more. I understand the intent of it, but I don't know how that it pertains to this development specifically. I think it's a really good.
It's a clerical call out that we're addressing a business owner's concern.
Okay.
It's not impacting your approval or not approval based on the motion and based on the discussion here tonight.
So is there anything required of the applicant then as part of
Nope.
that? Okay, thank
It's
you.
the easiest motion that you've had so far.
Thank you.
And then did we call out the sign? Because that was the other point of contention. Conditions the way that Jack wrote, okay. I'm chairing the meeting, so it's harder to chair and keep track of everything and then still go back and read without losing track. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Commissioner Urbani?
Would any commissioners consider allowing the kids to play until 7 p.m. instead of dusk? That would be after dinner for school-age kids that stay through dinner, since their hours are till 9 o'clock, Monday through Friday. There are kids that could be staying till 9.
Question, your pickup time is what time at this point based on these hours?
Well, it's up till 9.
typically, parents do, most of the parents do pick up at between 4 to 6. Yes, that's the time. But then Miss Nancy, as she said, that yes, if there are school-age kids who are going to be doing homework and if they want to play, we won't stop them from playing.
I think staff's intent, if you're going to be there after dark, you have to have lighting that's approved.
Well, again, if you want to make it based on just 7 o'clock straight, then I would add a condition that the lighting doesn't get changed, and if they want to go out and try to attempt to play when it's darker, that's up to them. But my concern is by allowing them later hours and doing it when it's dark out, then they're going to come back and ask for more illumination, which then may have an impact on surrounding properties. So that's the main goal for me. It's twofold. One is the impact of the noise, but then also the impact of the lighting on the surrounding residents as well.
And I
Okay.
don't support additional lighting.
You don't support additional lighting? Okay.
So then your motion, if you guys want to accept that, would be 7 p.m. with no changes to the lighting plan in terms of dispersion.
And then my piece of thought is that it would be limited to people that were actively daycare.
Yes, which is
Kids.
a number.
So we wouldn't be
That's
opening.
already
I
conditioned.
think.
That's in the conditions.
Okay.
And one question with that, when we're talking about different playgrounds and pickleball and other sports, the fence that we have submitted and what we have on the elevations and drawings is we're looking at different playground equipment.
You got to use the mic because I've
keep
done one
backing up.
remote. Nobody at home can hear you. So
So just want to go through heights and just the fence conversation with the playground areas when we're looking at pickleball and other playground equipment. Want to just ask your thoughts and opinions on height of fence, what your thoughts are.
you got something on here in a proposal. Do you wish to change it? If so, to which height and why? And then we'll discuss it and approve or not approve. But general consensus, that would have been a previous meeting, and we should have addressed that earlier on. You have a motion and a second on the table for approval as it's, with the conditions as read.
Just for context, the fence height is 4 feet around the building and 5 feet around the play area. That's what they proposed.
And that's what you proposed, and doesn't sound like there's an objection to that, so is that okay?
Yes.
Great. Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. Just to address Commissioner Urbani, personally, I'd prefer to leave it per staff's recommendation only for the resident notification process. They felt that playing hours would be done at dusk. So my preference would be to approve this tonight, have them see how it goes. If they'd like to come back and propose a modification to the hours so that the residents could be notified then and weigh in, that would be my only concern, but don't think it's because we don't want kids to play outside. So we certainly do, and point noted.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the table. Any other discussion? If not, we'll call the roll. Roll call?
I guess one quick follow-up, just to talk about the fence. When we're going through and just talking about it, if we come back for any changes, stuff like that, just asking the question if the height of the fence and type of fence is that passionate. When we're looking at the zoning code and just looking at different options, that's the direction we went, which is what we submitted, which we're agreeable to.
We don't know until you tell us what you're asking for, and we have a chance to review those documents. I don't know that raising the fence slightly would be very objectionable, but again, I don't know how far, what you're gonna come up with in the absence of us sitting here tonight. Is that fair?
It's fair. And that's
Yeah,
what we're
we
doing.
don't know what we don't know, so it's kind of hard to give you advice on that question.
So if we come back and say we're 6 feet, but what we're doing right now is we're just looking at what we're looking at for safety of the kids, where we don't have balls going underneath and stuff like that.
And I did reach out to them to verify that, because I was concerned, because there was some references on the plan, the height, and so that's what they came back with, the 4 and the 5. Now, if they came back with some minor changes, that's something we would consult with their chair of the commission, which is the mayor, and we would potentially approve at a staff level. If they come back at 10 feet, then we would probably bring it back here to commission for your approval. So if there's minor deviations to that, we may take it down at a staff level, but if it's something significant, it's coming back to this body for approval.
So what I'm gonna look for is, I think, a friendly amendment with, staff can work with the mayor for approval of increasing that height up to which feet, 6 feet?
I wouldn't even get into details on that, because that's something we'd look at. It depends on what they're
Okay.
proposing. So I would just leave it at it's standard practice in our department to review any minor changes at a staff level if we determine to be minor. And if we don't, and the mayor doesn't, then it comes to this body.
Great.
Should I call the roll?
Are you,
No, I don't think you need to add anything to the motion.
you don't need a second, you don't need an amendment to address
No,
that?
no, I don't
Okay,
think
that's great. All right, we got a motion and a second, and we're moving to the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Urbani,
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer, Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Vote passes.
Congratulations, and thank you for considering Mequon. We appreciate you coming to the community. Next public hearing item is Dan Byer for O'Donnell Real Estate. The applicant is seeking building and site plan approval and conditional use grant approval to allow for a 1,300 square foot coffee shop with drive-through services, and building and site plan approval to allow for single-story commercial development that includes the coffee shop, drive-through service, and a 3,800 square foot sit-down restaurant for a total of 5,100 square feet. Need a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to go into public hearing. Anybody here wishing to speak on that item? If you'd like to come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Sue Sowen. I'm at 14017 Northport Washington Road. We're right near this project, and I think it'd be great. I just wonder how they're gonna do the well and septic, because we have well and septic and we like it, and I wouldn't want that to be interfered with.
Great, thank you. So we'll address well and septic. Anybody else wish to speak on this item?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion, a second to close public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're out of public hearing. Jack, we're looking for your brief on this.
Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Oh, Kim?
Good evening. As indicated by the chair, there's a conditional use grant for the coffee shop. The Uleo Creek Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District requires that those remain as 2,000 square feet or less. You are allowed to do a drive-through as long as it's part of a multi-tenant structure, which this is. At our prior meeting, we did a land division of the larger parent parcel to accommodate this development. So it's just over 3.5 acres. We found all of the conditions or the findings for a conditional use grant to be positive. There's regulations, of course, to food and beverage services license-wise. It does meet all of the compatibility standards of the conditional use grants. And then in the Uleo Creek Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District, there are some additional requirements that we've tied to the conditional use grant. We have a condition in here regarding 65 decibel maximum for the operations, particularly related to the menu board and outdoor activities. We do recommend a small awning over that drive-through and walk-up window for the ice cream shop as part of that condition as well. And then one of the things that the Uleo Creek Neighborhood District talked about was making sure that the drive-through facilities were tucked to the rear. In this particular case, we're comfortable with that interior side for that drive-through, given the outdoor space and the amenities along the Uleo Creek. We think this is a positive site layout, and just factoring in that walk-up window for the ice cream when the coffee shop closes and it transitions to the ice cream. We think that's a great location for that pickup window to be close to the public street. And for those of you who worked on that subcommittee for the rezoning of all of these parcels, we did require a multi-use public path along the west side of the Port Washington Road street edge, and so installation of that path along with the Uleo Creek lighting and a consistent streetscape pattern is being applied to this project as well. So that location of that pickup window, I think, is a nice, vitality and feature along that public street edge. So staff is recommending approval of the conditional use grant. The other application that's applied here is the building and site plan review process. All of the technical standards of the zoning district are met. At full build out, if phase 2 were to be implemented, they're slightly short on the overall parking count. However, typically in these circumstances, we'll apply some calculations related to peak operations of the variety of uses, and we certainly encourage shared parking. So I suspect they'll be fine if phase 2 build out occurs, but we'll address that at that time. For today, they're just asking for phase 1 approval. Again, the neighborhood commercial zoning district had special conditions related to how to use open space, how to have flow between the interior of the site, those amenities, interior and the public space external to the development. All of those standards have been met. The building design, of course, is subject to the design guidebook that this body approved as part of the overall neighborhood concept theme, which is intended to be more rural in character. We can't say enough about the architecture of this particular design, and we think it's really positive. It'll set a great tone for development for the rest of the corridor. The other, sort of added feature, I guess, is the Uleo Creek Linear Park, which is referenced in the zoning district. It has been added by the park board to be part of the comprehensive park and open space plan for the city. Essentially, the neighborhood has an opportunity to create a 10-mile linear park. We've worked out with the developer where we think it's most appropriate to have this northern segment or portion of that loop come out on this property, and we really think it's appropriate to probably have it to the immediate property to the south when that gets developed. I addressed that in the staff report. If we need to talk about that further, we can. Other than that, we're recommending approval, and we're excited to see this project go forward.
Great. Applicant? Or do you want to have us chat first and then answer questions as we go? Okay. So far, it looks great. I just wanted to comment that I was excited to see this come forward and what you're proposing there. So we're definitely moving in the right direction, and with a little discussion tonight, we'll make sure it's perfect for the city. Commissioner Urbani.
Yes, I think it's beautiful. It looks like a great ad. I'm excited. I can't wait to go there. Can you explain to me, and I think you just referenced it, the connection to the Uleo Creek Linear Park will be on the property to the south? So it's not, there's nowhere, is there somewhere on a map where you can point to me where it might come in?
Sure. So if you go to the site plan, Jack, we contemplated this internally. If can you zoom out a little bit? Park Superintendent Mike Geese and I discussed this as well, and we had some discussions with the development team. You can see at the very top part of the screen, that's the L-shaped building, the outdoor plaza, your patio areas directly to the west of that, and it's got quite a number of features. And we're not sure exactly what that outdoor space will look like yet, but that is bumping up against the wetland on the property, which you can see to the west. There is a setback to the west. If you look on the grading plan all along that west property line until you get down to about where that dumpster location is, there is quite a bit of grade change. So when we look at trying to bring that linear pathway up to that outdoor outdoor patio space, it was becoming a little bit challenging and complicated. And then when we looked immediately west of the very southwest corner of that property, there's very little open space that's usable, and that's actually on the property to the south piece, right? So the piece that's adjacent is to the south and runs up to the west here. So we just didn't think, bringing the linear park any further up into this site was really going to create that much of a public benefit. The property to the south, again, contiguous to the west, is about 30 some acres, or maybe a little less than 30 acres. It is zoned for market rate housing development. So when we thought about the potential development that the zoning affords for the parcel to the west, the fact that the zoning district for the market rate housing requires really a campus-like setting with a lot of lifestyle amenities, both internal to the buildings, types of amenities, and passive open space. We really felt like the linear park should probably be incorporated with that campus-like setting, run along that north property line, and get us out to the multi-use path that's on the west side of Port Washington Road. That will get people, to the north at the intersection. People will have the opportunity to access this site because one of the conditions is that drive aisle. Jack, if you can point the arrow. Yeah, that drive aisle does have to go through to the south side. It does need to be constructed. So if that linear park is running along that south property line, people will be able to take their bikes or walk right into this development or get out onto the street. So we thought that was the best planning route at this point.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
So the connection's at that point, and we've called out an easement to do that, or the fact
Correct.
that was for future? Okay, good. Additional discussion? Commissioner Barnes?
Just a question on, with the bike trail and so forth, trailing, and bottom line of my question is could we be facing any problems with public use of this parking area and filling it up or, conflicting with businesses?
I suppose that's a potential.
How might we address that?
Well, we wouldn't, because it would be on private property. The private property owners, if they saw users of the parking lot without utilizing the businesses, they would have to call the police department and enforce that sort of situation.
It's a what if.
Yes. And then I didn't address the public hearing comment.
Well, and
Utilities
septic.
is private. And as part of the certified survey map, they have to show that the site will perk for the septic, and then provide the well as in addition to that.
Just to clarify, they will be able to do well, but it's a deferral. So when the water gets to the property line, they will be required to hook up to municipal water, correct?
Correct. If
Yeah.
I don't think that's contemplated, I don't think we expect that to happen.
gonna be a
That
while.
was part of
Yep.
the analysis that we did at the time of the Uleo Creek. But yes,
Just
that's
want
how
the
we
applicant to understand.
Yep,
and,
developer building contribute and yep,
Yeah.
and there's access there. Now, I mean, right now under the referendum with the water, unless there was a change in development here, they wouldn't necessarily be required to connect, right? It's only new development. So assuming this gets constructed now, they would be able to continue to use that well unless there was new development that happened on the property.
Great, and I was on the Aleo Creek Committee as well, and just
Yeah.
want to reiterate that this meets our vision. I wanted to express relief that it is something like this that benefits the community. It's not like a private office building or coffee shop that's just going to be singular use. I understand you live nearby, and you took it upon yourself to improve our community and do something that the whole community would want to see, and I do feel that you'll be rewarded for that in terms of a successful business. And very excited about the linear park. Would like maybe to advance the implementation discussion of that at maybe Parks Board, and like how does the path start getting in there, and how wide is it, and what does it look like, and where is it on a map, and all that good stuff. So you can, so not to, we didn't mean for the linear park to overshadow this amazing development, and thank you again for proposing it.
Thank you. Commissioner Schaefer?
It's hard for me to think about this without knowing what phase 2 might be, but I know as long as we're all clear that phase 2 is completely separate and will have to come forward on its own. But I think it looks great. Two things, and this is perhaps beyond you, but the lighting, I continue to hear anecdotal feedback about the Oleo Creek lighting that I assume is the same as what is at the Madison Medical Building on the corner of Highland and Port. And whether you're getting it or not, I don't know, but I live in that area, so that jaunt up and down Highland is a fairly frequent trip for me, and neighbors in that area seem to be troubled by it. Like, I know we've had this conversation about the color of the lights, et cetera. So just confirming this would be exactly the
So,
same, or is there any change?
New news.
New news?
Yes,
Yeah.
new news. So if you go out there now and you look, the light that is furthest to the north has a new head on it, and it's full cutoff. Now there is some reflectivity because of the lens, but if you look at it compared to the other lights, you don't get that spotlight look to it.
The glare.
So we worked with the lighting, yes, close to the hospital. We worked with the lighting engineer, and there was a new version that came out after that first version was in. So we replaced the one just to see what it was going to look like, and then budget-wise, we'll have to figure out where we're going to get the money from, but we'll replace the other 5 that are out there. But, so that new fixture will be required for not only there, but everywhere else. So the new subdivision that's right next to the clinic, that'll have the new light, and then everybody else afterwards would have it. So, it's going to have a little bit of still glare because there's a globe, so you're still going to get some reflectivity from that globe. The only way you could get rid of that is if you just didn't have a globe, which we wanted to maintain a little bit more antique look to it, so it's going to have some globe. But if you go out there and look at the two, you can definitely see the difference between them. So,
Thanks, Jack. Yeah.
You mean multi-family to the south? Yes. Yes. No, you could serve it privately. The city engineer has had discussions in the past with development proposals that are much further south in this corridor, and so there are ways to address that. That's probably not ideal from a private market, attraction standpoint, but there are options.
I know that's neither here nor there with this. I think multifamily is it's always going to be it will generate a lot of discussion.
Well, yeah, and not to get into a full zoning conversation about that. I mean, there are a lot of development and design standards tied to it. You can't be taller than 2 stories. You can't have stacked units. You can only have 4 units per building. The density's limited. I mean, the regulations in that zoning district are significant. Yeah.
And I recognize that that's
it's not zone just to clarify, so there's not a confusion in the marketplace, it's not zone multifamily, it's zoned for a variety of single-family uses from senior to maybe senior 55 and up apartments to a variety of housing product, correct?
It's a variety of housing that's allowed. It's not restricted to 55 and older, though.
Thank you.
Great. Yep.
And that change was made at the end due to all of those design standards. It was really the issue of the design and the density, not so much whether you were 55 and older that was living there.
Okay. Yeah. My question came in with the parking. I was just up in Door County and went to One Barrel for a pizza. And, you know, on a Thursday night, it was jammed. And everyone was eating outside, and you've got that really cool appeal for, hey, I want to check out what's in that community going on here, and you're right off the highway. So I think you're going to get a lot of attention, and this is going to be very successful. So what I do want to address is we were a little short of parking. We could address it with phase 2. I just wanted some discussion as to what that meant or how we accommodate for that, because they're not in a great spot for street parking. And it's going to be a cutoff for customers coming in if they can't park or get there via the path.
Well, for this phase of the project, there's a minimum requirement of 60 stalls.
This exceeds the parking requirement for phase 1. I'm aware of that, but phase 2, the combined parking, they would have to add parking for phase 2 or come up with a less intense use, correct?
Well, we don't know what the potential uses of phase 2 are, so it's a little bit difficult to gauge. So we won't know until we fully understand what phase 2 is. I mean, historically, what the Planning Commission has authorized is only build the 60, and we can approve what the site layout would look like to add the additional stalls if deemed needed. So I think, if and when this is up and operating, we'll get a better sense under phase 1 of what the true demand is.
Okay. But if we needed to add parking, is there capability in phase 2? If so, where was my question?
Well, that all depends. I mean, I think you can.
I know it depends, but if they need more parking, can they add it based on the plan?
Well, you can tell that the parking layout allows for expansion to it. How much needed is going to depend on what's proposed in terms of uses as well as square footage. And so where that parking gets added and where that building is located, again, in compliance with all of the technical standards of the code, is going to dictate what and how much and where.
Great.
So I can't be specific when we're talking a lot of generalities.
Yeah, I know
phase 2.
MTC 1's the last item on the agenda, and we've had a big discussion on lack of parking with that. And I
That
don't.
was so many years ago. We've got 300 public spaces that go underutilized right out here for years now.
Right. So my question still hasn't been answered. Maybe the applicant will do that.
And the question is specifically, do we have the capability to expand the parking at
Yes.
phase 2? And I think ultimately the answer is the parking will be dependent on the uses of phase 2, and we have to make
Correct.
sure that as we develop phase 2, that gets factored into the equation. Currently, we are hamstrung on this site by this required setbacks along Port Washington, along Pioneer. We're hamstrung on the site by the wetland setbacks that we have to be on the west. And so, oddly enough, this is a pretty tight site. We have a stormwater management system that is all undergrounds. We don't have the ability to have stormwater management on site because of the tightness of the site. And so, candidly, we don't have a lot of extra room here on this site plan. And so I think ultimately what we're trying to do is mitigate any parking issues by the use of phase 2 as the project gets developed.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that it was either limited or there was room for expansion, because that use for site 2, I can easily see somebody coming forward and saying, I want a restaurant, and it's going to be a great option, great square footage for your ROI, and then you may be being limited with parking, and then we're back discussing that. So I just wanted to make sure we addressed a little bit of that here tonight to make sure not only you were accommodated for, and I know phase one is well covered, but we had some of that discussion tonight so that we could move in the right direction. So, any other questions? Commissioner Barnes.
Sorry, but I'd just like to reiterate just my long-term concern that we're prepared to address that if need be in the future.
We as a city, if we're called as a police department for people parking illegally, can work with them to enforce parking. I think there's going to be a little spillover that's going to happen at this parcel. Being a bicyclist, just like you, I know I like to park at the furthest at one end and then ride to the furthest on the other end and then back to get my full ride in. Every inch counts.
That is what I'm imagining. Yeah.
Right. And, again, depending on what we come up with, other developments and other park space and other, things, I don't think it's reasonable to hinder the applicant in any way or require them to allow public parking unless that's, being discussed here. They're building a development and it's not in one of the conditions that they have to allow for public parking as one of the conditions. And I don't see it as really being something reasonable to require that of them at this time. They're very aware that people are going to park there. They're probably going to buy something at the restaurant or the coffee shop, either at the beginning or the end of the ride. I know I always try to. And I know a lot of people will ride to that space. My biggest question is, I just wanted to see where the connection was going to happen at the south so that you could be that final end destination at the other end and you could serve the rest of the district without them having to go to Port Road and crossing the street to get in. So I was excited to hear that and where that was connecting because that wasn't as clearly conveyed in the drawings. So that was well done. Does that address what you're looking to do? Yes, thank you. Okay. Any additional questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion for approval based on staff's comments.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second, and we'll call the roll on this one too.
Commissioner Hawley,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer, Commissioner Urbani,
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes,
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye, and thank
Vote
you again for
passes.
this great development in our community. We appreciate it and looking forward to seeing you succeed for many years. Yeah, it's going to be great. All right, next item on here is consent agenda. I do have one person that did register to speak on Point Real Estate in support of, but they had questions on some other things. So I think we're just going to do consent on the Mequon 1 LLC. The applicant is seeking development agreement and minor request for fill permit for 30,000 cubic yards of construction fill to allow for 13 lots in Phase 8 of the Enclave of Mequon Preserve subdivision for the property located at 7901 West Preserve Parkway. So I'll just look for
I would like to move. I'd like to move acceptance.
all right. Get a motion and a second?
3B, second.
For 3B, yeah, and then I'll pull back up to Point Real Estate. All of those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries. And then Point Real Estate, the applicant is seeking development agreement approval to allow for Phase 2 consisting of 83 lots of the Swan Ridge Farm subdivision for the lands located immediately south and west of 10129 North Swan Road. I did have Jane, is it Chavaco, is in support and would like to speak. Jane?
I didn't necessarily want to speak. I just want to know what the timing is because it's going to cost us a lot of money to connect to this. And so when do we need to have our laterals in? When is the plat map going to be done? Those are my questions.
That's great. We'll look to have staff address that, and then we'll just take this item up immediately following that. Do we know?
Well, this is for phase 2, so phase 1 is, which is to the south. The phase 1 final plat should probably be in front of us next month or the month following.
Yep.
This will be DA for phase 2, which means they'll probably start some construction over the winter. Probably looking at final plat, I would guess, sometime next late fall, or maybe even later than that. So it's gonna be a little bit of time before that final plat is approved for that subdivision, so. That's it. And then Joe's here, you can correct me if I was wrong on anything there.
Good evening, Joe Bukovich with Point Real Estate. Jack's really close, so if this gets approved here tonight, I recommend it for approval. Then at the council meeting in November, if it gets approved, get it all signed, probably looking late November, early December to start the sanitary. The utilities be finished up by March, April, finish roads in June, July. So the sewer will be usable July-ish, something like that,
Okay.
so.
Sewer will be usable as July, and then who should the resident follow up with if she has additional questions after this meeting?
She could call engineering, and just for your reference, she lives in this parcel right here.
Yeah.
Yes, the 2 houses there, that's why she's asking about it. She can speak with Cullen Engineering when we get further along in the process.
Okay, great. All right. Questions or a motion?
I was just gonna confirm, this is the other 42 lots, right? It's only
Correct.
2 phases.
It's
so
2 phases,
41,
yes.
Okay. I would move approval as per staff conditions.
You can make a second and then ask a question. Feel free. And it looks like we have one more resident that wishes to speak. If you could state your name and your address,
Yeah,
please.
Nancy Daum, 10102 North Concord in Huntington Park.
Hi.
There's been a lot of dirt moving around back there. And right now, there's like a large berm about 2 stories high, just south of where the barn of the one property. And it's like right next to the border of our subdivision. And I'm just wondering, is that just a temporary thing? Because otherwise, it seems like, water could flow down and hit our yard.
Jack's nodding his head. Yes, that is temporary.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Berms are how many feet? 4?
4 feet or 6 at the most.
4? Yeah.
It's not a berm though, it's just
Yeah.
temporary stuff.
And then you had a question?
I have one, I'm seeking a little clarification. It's condition 17 that you have there regarding water connection and extension. My understanding is that the water service for this whole development is to be independent of the Huntington Park development. This came up at the phase 1 discussion, but I guess I'm not sure I understand what's being referred to or
They're just required to run. They've done water main with phase 1 already up about to the halfway point of that parcel. They just need to continue it through their site and basically stub it out on the very northeast part of the property in Swan Road, just north of those parcels.
So it's not intended as a just short of connection with Huntington Park water system?
Correct. It's stubbed out in right of way towards Huntington Park. So at any point, if Huntington Park wants to connect, they can have that discussion with the water utility and have at least legal access to connect.
I'll just make a statement that on behalf of Huntington Park, with our own water supply and so forth, I would expect that we would want to keep it separate.
Okay, great. Any additional questions? Now we got a motion and a second on the table. Okay, motion and a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We're on to regular business. Sumath Hospitality, the applicant is seeking minor request approval to allow for a 385 feet of fencing for the property located at 10240 North Cedarburg Road, Sybaris. Welcome. Staff?
Yeah, so Jack's gonna get up the site plan. Essentially, there is a proposal, if you could go a little bit up, yeah. Yeah, there's a proposal to provide some fencing along the most eastern, keep going. I'm sorry, the most western, yes, building that is fronting on Cedarburg Road. There's quite a bit of setback from Cedarburg Road, but the access is immediately to the left there. So the yellow line shows where the fencing is proposed. They are trying to direct traffic to the entrance, the vehicular entrance, which is by that island right in there. They do have security located at that location as well. And because the intent was really guest safety and guest privacy, we did reach out to the police department and ask them to weigh in on the proposal here. The feedback from the police department was that this will probably assist with directing foot traffic to that main entrance. It doesn't impede the police department's ability to access the property or address any potential issues that would arise. Our proposal from a staff perspective is that when we have allowed fencing on commercial properties in the front yard, it has been ornamental in nature. One of the recent religious institutions on Mequon Road implemented some black aluminum fencing. The data center on Port Washington Road, I'm sorry, did I say Port or Mequon Road? And then the data center on Port Washington Road also has some black decorative fence. This was the proposal by the applicant. Staff is not supportive of a 6-foot tall, complete 100% opaque fencing. We don't want to set a precedent that all of the front yards of, I don't want to say all, but we don't want to set a precedent for commercial development to have a 6-foot, 100% opaque fence in their front yard. So with the support of the police department, staff is recommending approval. We do recommend that the fence not exceed 4.5 feet in height, and we do recommend that it be an ornamental style fence that has some openings in it. And we provided a couple of samples of what's been approved for other commercial development in the city.
And that style of fencing is acceptable to the applicant?
Yes, the black aluminum fence, we'd be fine with that. We would just ask that it be allowed to be a little bit higher. I know in the recommendation it said 4.5 foot. If we could do 6 foot, that'd be more what we're looking for.
Feedback from staff, they're looking for 6. We have a disagreement on height.
Yeah, we recommended 4.5.
Are you opposed to 6 or 4.5?
We recommended 4.5.
Okay,
Yes.
yep, okay. So you have a strong preference for 4.5, okay. Commissioners?
Did you say you had an example of what you're recommending?
There are samples in the packet of
Picture.
what's been approved, just visually. It doesn't have to be exactly that.
That or similar based on staff approval, correct? Commissioner Chorin?
I'm struggling a little bit to understand. You're looking for security and to isolate the user from the traffic, and so you have this now open fence. What's the point? You know, I think, can't you do more with perhaps that kind of fence and some landscaping? I'm struggling to understand, you know, why this would work.
So with the privacy aspect of it, we're fine with this design, and then we would be coming back in the future for doing some type of landscaping for some shrubbery and things like that. For the security, we would prefer it to be 6 feet because one of our main things is we only allow 2 people per suite. We've had issues in the past where people have parked on the road and have gained entry or parked at Quick Trip and have come onto our property that way.
Okay. Commissioners?
I'm just thinking 4.5 feet isn't really a deterrent for that purpose.
Is there some kind of fencing like this that has the like spires on top of it? Yep. And that total height would still have to be at 4.5 with the ornamental top pieces?
Well, the Planning Commission can authorize a different height if you choose.
But that is a slippery slope.
does code say 4 feet?
For fence?
Describe the code, the fence code as it relates to this property, I guess is what Commissioner Chorin's asking.
Well, commercial, you can authorize anything. In terms of residential, it is limited to 4.5 feet. You can go up to, is it 6 feet? Yeah, if it's outside of your setback requirements. Yeah, you have to attractively landscape it on the public-facing side.
Okay. Commissioner Parrish.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you want us to table this topic tonight. You're the manager, correct? You've come
Correct.
into the finance committee, and for the public, I just want everyone to know that it seems to be a really well-run place, and you're taking steps to be a good neighbor. So I think the concern is more people leaving the property and venturing out upon the neighborhood. It's, in my mind, it's not the other way coming in, whether it's from the Quick Trip or what have you. So great point, Alderman or Commissioner Chorin, and I just wonder if this is a landscaping issue, and maybe you want to redesign this and use a landscape architect. And like, do you really want us to? I'm not going to go up to 6 feet. That's a slippery slope, and we don't want that precedent on that corridor. It's just, I don't see it happening. So would you rather go back to the drawing board, or do you want 4.5 feet?
I mean, if we're not going to get any higher, then we can go with there. I know the owners really want a fence there for security reasons, and we are looking to beautify the area as well. We do want to do some landscaping in there to help beautify it more.
Yeah, you guys have been great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Urbani.
Are there any restrictions on the height of a hedge normally?
We usually discuss the height of a hedge when it's adjacent to a parking lot, because we're trying to screen, vehicles, just the aesthetic of a parking lot. The front yard of this site does have some soft landscaping. It's not, it's well done. It's well maintained. It's not formal, in terms of what a typical urban commercial site would be. So I do think it's nicely done for the character of the neighborhood and the character of their site. So, there could be additional, evergreen type trees added, but I don't know that that is really addressing what their interest is. I wouldn't force them to do additional landscaping other than some pockets, along the fence line, just so that it ties in with the rest of the landscaping plan. But that recommendation was really just about aesthetics and making sure it was compatible with the rest of what's happening in the front yard. It wasn't really related to any security issue.
Perhaps something thorny.
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes.
Can I make a motion, please?
Sure. Always welcome.
I'd like to move acceptance of the staff recommendation for approval of the fence, where with our discussion being on the height, it states not exceeding 4.5 feet in height. The details, of course, being further, any appearance details at staff level.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Why don't we call the roll call? I see people hesitating, so I want to make sure that everyone gets their vote recorded properly. Go ahead.
Commissioner Urbani.
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes.
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin.
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchek.
Aye.
Vote passes.
Great. Congratulations. Thank you. All right, next item. The Architects Partnership LTD, the applicant is seeking a building and site plan approval to allow for a new 3,415 square foot financial institution with drive-through ATM lane for the property at 11001 North Port Washington Road, Chase Bank.
So
Staff
the
team?
subject site is the former site of Ace Hardware, which is also on our agenda later this evening. The site is just under an acre, and with some revisions to the site layout, we were able to work out any of the non-compliant technical standards. Initially, there was a parking lane adjacent to Town Square Road, which I do think is in the packet, and so then they submitted a revision to that. But otherwise, the proposal is in compliance with the B2 zoning districts. We did discuss with the applicants a little bit of the architecture. This is similar to some of the other financial institutions that have been approved in the corridor. Based on my conversations with the project team, that is exactly what landed them to have some of the features that this structure is proposed to have. They did keep red brick because of what they have seen throughout the corridor and some of our other commercial structures. So they were really trying to blend in some of the architectural features and aesthetics that they found in the corridor. I did include some imagery of some of their more traditional designs throughout the country, as well as a recent proposal in our neighboring community of Germantown. The proposal in Germantown is very similar to this, but uses some darker coloring, which I do think is probably consistent with the aesthetic of that proposed neighborhood as well. So really, lighting plan, landscaping plan, we do have some minor recommendations about street trees. And then engineering does have some conditions of approval that I do think Cole wants to review and go over with the Planning Commission. But we do support the project. We're recommending approval of the building and site plan. The use is permitted, so this is not a conditional use grant, so we're not really discussing, operations or the land use in this particular case. So Cole?
Yeah, just a couple of quick things on my end. Just informational that it'll be connecting to sewer and water. The bigger thing that actually we discussed with the applicant, I discussed with the applicant this morning, is the access. We do have a recommendation for a condition. That's number 9 in the packet here. Site shall have one access point to Town Square Road. And that access point should be directly located across from a driveway on the north side of that street. That street is just pretty encumbered with driveway entrances, and there's a concern of the vicinity to Northport Washington Road as well. So we are recommending one access point, and basically would be eliminating that east access point that's shown on there. They originally had it proposed as an exit only, but there's just a concern with traffic coming in and out from Port Washington Road there. So,
As a former business owner that was in the building just north of that, I think that's a very good idea, because that's a challenging intersection, so that's great. Applicant, any thoughts or feedback?
Okay, there it's on now. I think staff covered our project very well. As Cole mentioned, we met this morning to discuss the site plan and the staff recommendation. We agree with all of the conditions of approval, but except for item number 9. The site plan that you have in front of you, we agree the site existing today has 3 access points. We agree that there should only be one full access point to this site, but on the site plan in front of you, we are also showing an exit only for customers to exit on the east side. From our discussions with Cole, we know that this doesn't meet the 75-foot setback requirement from Northport Washington Road. We would like to further conversations with both Cole and the fire department to ensure we have adequate circulation and further discuss access point locations. If we can't come to an agreement on the exit only second access point, we would like to discuss potentially moving the one full access driveway location more east. That way it's easier for customers who are going to the main building entryway or wrapping around to the ATM lane. But we would like to just request that item number 9 give some flexibility, so that way we can discuss further with staff on the access point and locations.
Staff feedback?
Engineering's decision.
Yeah, and as we discussed this morning, I'd be fine with looking at that. If we get it down to one access point, maybe being a little bit more flexible with where that comes in. Obviously, our recommendation was to be directly across from one on the north side, but if we can't come to a decision between staff and the applicant, we could always bring it back to PC if it becomes an issue.
And you've got is the USPS drop-off still right there too?
Not sure.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to be cautious of going too far east because of the USPS drop-off right there. I'd be supportive of one location moving a little further east, and them working with staff to establish that. I don't know that it needs to line up. I got hands raised. Commissioner Hawley.
I would just caution that because as a person who has gone to all of those businesses around there, the traffic backs up down that street. And if you're trying to pull out of either like where the orthopedic hospital, like their, physical therapy and all that is, or that location, you can't pull out. Like you're sitting there for a really long time because the traffic just backs up. So I'd be really careful on that. I would not go too far east at all.
Okay. Commissioner Schaefer.
Do we have a rendering that shows the single entry exit? All of them have 2, right? Which is the existing layout. Okay.
Well, there's 3 currently.
I can't remember 3.
It's on the screen. I have it on the screen.
Oh, that interesting one in the back.
Where the
I never
propane
that
used to
one.
be.
Okay.
So I think what's shown right now on the applicant's proposal is keeping the one furthest to the east, and then the one in the middle is what the current plan shows.
Yeah.
And
And
just
closing the one farthest to the
Makes-
west. Yeah.
That's correct. And just condensing the one on the east instead of it being a full access point to an exit only. That way, any stacking that gets backed up would be backed up into the Chase property and not onto West Town Square Road or Northport Washington Road.
Little feedback, you're gonna have frustrated customers during peak traffic time wanting to exit in a spot where there's no room to exit. As other commissioners have shared, it does back up there, and we're not trying to limit you and make it harder to conduct business. We're just highlighting based on our experience, and I had a business there for 20 years. It does back up. It is tough to get out. I wouldn't even exit to go that way. I would exit out and head west, out of the back entrance instead, because it would get so far backed up. So just, be cautious of what you wish for. I know my pulse, and I would encourage the single entrance and exit to be a little bit wider in the middle to accommodate your request. But, again, keep that traffic and address a traffic issue that's been kind of ongoing with that section of road for a while, and not encumber your future customers there. That would be my pulse. But, again, I'm one vote up here, so we'll see what the other commissioners have to say. Commissioner Parrish.
Sure, I'm not going to opine on the traffic yet. I'm going to talk about the way the building looks, and first of all, my preference would be for some of the other Chase Bank models. This feels like a little bit of comedy of errors, so if your expectations were formulated based on driving the corridor, you'd be surprised to know that many of us dislike almost every single financial institution building on the corridor, as does the community. They lack character, they're flat roofs. I don't know your architectural terms, fenestrations. I know that you talked about the design standards at the last meeting. I wasn't here. I know that there were inconclusive opinions that you derived from the commission, but I would just challenge us to think, when it's a small building like this, it's a really awkward little box in every situation. And I just wish that there was some more character and peak and I don't know if my ramblings made you say, hey, maybe we should reconsider the standard Chase Bank model, because I think it would be much more classy and fit in better. So what, how do we end up with these boxes over and over again on this corridor? It's very frustrating.
Yeah, we did share some of that history and some of the process that we've gone through with the project team.
So what's the answer? Like,
They're asking right now for approval of this particular structure.
and the applicant is happy with what's proposed? You don't prefer another model like the Germantown one, or maybe your traditional bank models that look like the rest of them?
Well, my name is Henry Amigacha from TAP. This is similar to the Germantown one. I think the difference in this is the choice of brick, and we have 3 different materials for this one. The drawing makes it, you see it as boxes, but we do have in-depth to this property. It's a prototype that is done in various other places within this Wisconsin region. We're using canopies, we're using sunshade devices to give that kind of depth, and then we're using a curtain wall, which is on the very far side if you look on the north elevation. And so even though it looks like a box, we've played with the movement of the cubes, if you can put it that way. And so it doesn't look that, it's going to be very similar to Germantown, what we have in Germantown. It's just the choice of the color.
Thank you. I'd like Planning Commission to revisit. I know you came to the conclusion that was inconclusive, but when you break it out into different building sizes, and things just are out of scale. I mean, so let's keep working on the design standards for this corridor, otherwise the whole thing's gonna be built out with structures no one wants. And please don't take my comments to be, as in we don't want your business here, because we absolutely do and appreciate your investment here. This is more on the design side, and we want this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, and the application here tonight is building and site plan review, so the Planning Commission does have authority over architecture and design, should you choose to give direction to a more traditional design.
Other people have their hands up. Commissioner Chorin, you're being called on whether you raised your hand or not, my friend.
Right. Well, I'm struggling a little bit because when I look at that, it's noted as red brick, right?
Yes, please, rose blend.
That doesn't look like red brick. I mean, it just, I'm not saying I dislike the building, it's just I can't get a real good perspective. Is there a 3D model of this that we could see in actual material colors? Because if it's this color, that doesn't convey what we've been told it is.
Yeah, it's more brownish orange on the screen.
No, the rose blend that we're using is matching the other characteristics of brickwork used within the same community. So we are not deviating from that.
Well, I understand that, but I can't see that.
Do we have a photo of that in another community
I
in the
do have-
packet?
I do have one here which is much better.
More clear. The traditional example has the red brick shown on it, so 179. That's built somewhere.
On that same rendering, there's.
I thought that was like, that looks like the pavilion, it's perfect. Ties in with across the street.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So the question is the design of the building something that you want to see, or do you want to send them back with something more traditional? You know, because I've got some angst up here and no clear direction. I've got the same concern, but I personally would prefer to see something a little more traditional, tying in with what's in Germantown. But I'd like to give them concrete direction so that it doesn't turn into an art show in a future meeting if that's the case.
it's interesting when I look up, this is Germantown?
No. Germantown
Confused
is,
with the Mr. Germantown, because
go-
the Germantown one is identical except black and white.
Okay.
It's the wrong comparison.
so go to 181.
Just something like that. It fits in.
Page 181 or 179. Wait, yeah, 181. With a peaked roof. I think that's the,
A peaked roof.
that's the critical.
Not for Germantown.
Correct. Commissioner Urbani is correct
I
that the
misspoke.
Germantown one is almost identical to the one that's proposed. It's just a different color palette. Staff included these traditional designs as some of the branches that are constructed throughout the country. And we talked to the applicants about, their choice of the more contemporized version versus the traditional design.
I'm going to take a straw vote here shortly on whether we want to see a traditional design or another, or move forward with this one with a vote tonight, because I'm seeing some hesitation. Commissioner Schaefer?
There is on page 176, Commissioner Hawley found this, but the rose blend brick is shown on there, a small sample. It does look different than that rendering, but it looks like what I would expect, like a reddish brick. So in that little 9 box of different materials, it's on there.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yes.
Ken Coliander with Chase Bank. What you're seeing here, these are about 10 years old, and they're no longer our standard, so we don't build in this format anymore. So if you're leaning towards this, you're in the past.
Great.
I just want to point that out.
My concern is that they're leaning towards something that's not here, but there's an identifiable direction with something in the past. So we'll just take a straw poll vote. And do we want to see this? Are we okay voting for this? Yes. Raise your hand, yes. Or do you want to see something more traditional? Leave your hand down.
Voting for this, yes?
Yeah, moving forward with a vote on this.
What do you mean for this?
It's just,
All right. So we've got feedback that the applicant likes this design. This is their current design. It's not their past design. They would like to move forward with this based on the discussion here tonight. I need a motion to approve or a motion otherwise to keep the meeting moving in a direction. We are not designing on the fly tonight. If we start designing on the fly tonight without clear, easy instructions, I'm going to request that we make a motion to table and circle back on this in the future.
I'm going to move that we proceed with the plan as presented, with the rendering that's with the color, the darker color than what's being represented there. And certainly the traffic entrance and so forth remaining to be addressed with the city staff.
Single entrance or multiple entrance?
As a single entrance away from the intersection.
Great.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any additional discussion or any additional discussion from the applicant? Okay, with that, we're definitely taking a roll here.
Commissioner Urbani.
Aye.
Commissioner Barnes.
Aye.
Commissioner Chorin.
Aye.
Commissioner Hawley.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer. Alderman Parrish.
No.
Alderman Strelchak.
Knowing that this is passing anyway, I'm saying no just from the design standard moving forward to send a message, but I welcome you into the community and congratulations on this being approved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the schedule, Han Ace Hardware, the applicant is seeking building and site plan amendment approval to allow for a greenhouse and outside storage for the property located at 11300 North Port Washington Road. Welcome.
Thank you.
So this is for the permanent greenhouse facility over at Ace Hardware. I have the site plan up on the screen to show what they're proposing. As many of you may recall, when we talked about the temporary greenhouse and outdoor storage area, there's a property line that runs right through that parking lot, which I'm showing here on with my cursor. So what they did, which was I think rather ingenious, they actually added new islands in this location, in this location, this location to segregate that parking area from their greenhouse area. So this area actually technically is still public parking, but this area is all enclosed for their usage. So I think that was a good solution to the kind of an odd problem that we've had with regard to where that lot line runs. So what they're showing here is a couple islands with a gate that would allow customers to go in and get supplies or get deliveries in and out. There's also a gate in the back that connects to the loading dock. There's a greenhouse in the center, and then they moved up their propane tank to basically to the middle front of the section. They're enclosing the area with a 4.5-foot fence with brick pillars to match the existing building, and then they're showing landscaping in the front and some wall packs and some exterior lighting. I'll go to the rendering. If I can read my writing. So this is what it would look like from the parking lot, basically. So you see the greenhouse, which is all glass, except for the lowest panel. You see the fencing and the openings for the gates, and then the islands. I think they did a nice job with this, and we're supportive of it and recommend approval.
I just had one question. I saw a greenhouse in a different community, and it was illuminated at night, and it really lit up the sky pretty bright. So I just wanted to know if or how we were going to address that.
I guess, and it would be, they're allowed to have it illuminated during their hours of operation. So in wintertime, I guess, I don't know if it'd be functional in wintertime or not, but as long as they're open for business, they would allowed to have it lit up. Now, we could put some limitations on that. I'm not sure exactly what that would be offhand, but if there's some condition you want to add that we can address the issue if need be, we can look into it a little bit more in detail.
I love the use. I'm glad that you came forward with this, and I think it fits in perfectly with what you're doing. I just want to make sure the lighting's addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. The lighting within the greenhouse will be less lumens than the parking lot lighting would be in the surrounding area, and they would strictly be down lights inside the greenhouse itself. There would be wall packs on the building that illuminate the garden center, as well as some light posts and other parts.
Are you anticipating?
But that meet.
Yeah, go ahead.
That meet the standard code. Or
are you anticipating year-round usage, or are you anticipating just seasonal in the summer?
It'll be year-round usage. I mean, to a much less extent during
Sure.
the winter.
Okay.
What was that?
It was
yeah,
just.
yeah. So we'll have in the winter really the only use in there. So we're not gonna be growing anything in there. But in the winter we'd have Christmas trees and wreaths inside the greenhouse. So you'd heat it to a moderate temperature. And
Is the downlighting noted in the staff requirements?
Though the parking lot lighting, they're matching what's out there, which was all recently replaced. Those comply with code. I did not get the cut sheet on the wall packs. That's a condition of approval that the wall packs need to meet our code for full cutoff. The issue is the interior lighting of the greenhouse itself that we don't typically address, but I mean, as long as they're meeting their state requirements to illuminate public space, I don't think we can really control it too much beyond that. And I think it'd actually be kind of a nice feature to have, especially from the road, to see that lit up at night. It'd be kind of cool, I think.
Even with downlighting, it's going to be lit up and it's going to look great. I'm just, concerned on the place that I drove by had the grow lights on, and it was super bright. It almost looked like stadium lighting,
Well, like I said,
slight fog. I mean, it was a lot brighter than expected. And I just want to make sure that, we're talking about this and we don't get any complaints. I mean, you're a great business, and I want to make sure that you succeed. So
yeah, no grow lighting. So strictly retail sales type lighting in there.
Right.
I'm sure we can come up with a standard for interior illumination based on building code. requirements, things like that. So if you want to just add that as a condition, we can work that out at staff level. That should be fine.
Yeah, I would be fine with conditions, on a staff level and just work it through. I'm not looking for it to be overly restrictive. I just want it to be, address the concern that, it could turn into a beacon at night and, lit and seen from the highway, great. Beacon looking like stadium lighting, not what we're looking to achieve here, but
Absolutely. And
that's
very,
where I
very
was at.
little will be seen from the highway, just with the elevations, because of the berms and the trees in the back along
great.
the freeway.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Make a motion. I
Great.
would move approval per staff's conditions with, I guess, the additional condition that there's some discussion related to the
Interior illumination.
interior
of it,
lighting,
yeah.
interior illumination of the greenhouse area.
And staff approval of that. Yep.
Yes, and staff approval of
Great.
Second.
that.
Second. Motion and a second. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing that. Next item on is Bauer Sign and Lighting for Mequon Marketplace Holdings LLC. The applicant is seeking minor request approval to allow for a master sign plan for the property located at 11300 North Port Washington Road, Han Ace and Planet Fitness. You have a neighbor.
Yes, some of you may recall some of the conversations we had during the building and site plan approval process about this coming forward. I do have, it's kind of tough to see, but I do have on the screen the renderings of the wall signs. So basically they're looking for a wall sign for each of the individual tenants. And our code for a multi-tenant building only allows 30 square feet. This is a proposal to be, for the ACE is 47.5 square feet. Now, in this case, we feel that the little larger sign makes sense because of this 40,000 square foot building, some very large gables. I think the rendering here, you can kind of see it. It's a little tough to read, but I think that fits in pretty well with the scale and massing of that gable. They did present us a 30 square foot option, which is right here, which is, I think, a little bit tough to read. And this is also pretty far off the road, too. And then Planet Fitness originally had a larger sign, but they actually then, we said, well, why don't we just make it 50 square feet per tenant space in the gable? So this would be what the Planet Fitness sign would be. And so again, I think that fits in pretty well at the scale of that gable, and it'll look somewhat visible from the road. This is, again, pretty far set back off Port Washington Road. So the master sign plan would allow two signs, one on each gable at 50 square foot maximum. It would also allow two signs along I-43, which is allowed per code, and those meet our sign code. This is one for ACE. It's shown in the back. It has the halo glow lighting. And there's another one for Planet Fitness that meets the same requirements on the other gable. So I think they picked good locations. It's probably only two good locations you would get visibility from 43 on in each of those gables. So we're supportive of that as well. And then there is a requirement or allowance for a monument sign, which they don't have shown a location or a design, but there's, if you can recall, the existing Walgreens sign and the Wells Fargo sign, those are brick columns with a sign panel that goes across. They're looking to match those, and we just have to pick out a location. For those that remember, the old Metro Market sign was kind of in a brick wall along the entranceway. That's been removed years ago, so we'll just have to find a good location for this sign for the monument sign. But we support the use of that same brick material and the same design to match the other two. So this is all still an inclusive development. So, and as I said earlier, they replaced all the light fixtures in the entire parking lot to match. So I think they're doing a really nice job out there of making sure this is still a coordinated development with amongst the three different buildings. So again, we're supportive of the master sign plan in accordance with the conditions in the report. Thank you.
That's great. Commissioner Chorn.
I got a question. In each of those gable ends, there's the existing round window and the shed, we'll call it an awning over the windows, right?
Yes, those are both going to be removed. In fact, they're gone already. We did approve the building and changes to that previously. So if you look at I'll pull up the ACE one. That's the backside window is remaining. So that's the backside off of 43. So this is basically the front one. I'll zoom in as much as I can. So this is what it would look like now. And originally we were a little concerned about that, but if you look at the other buildings on there, these are only two built. This is the only building that had that shed roof on it. The rest of them didn't have that, and they actually had their sign location there, so it made sense. I just wanted to make sure that they fill in that windows with the same matching brick so it doesn't look out of place. So I think that it's a good location for it. I mean, it was originally built as a one-tenant building, and so, I mean, if this was a 3 or 4 tenant building, we'd probably have some issues with trying to figure out where the signage goes, but with the 2 tenants and fairly large tenants, I think it balances out pretty well overall.
Great job. Any additional feedback? Or a motion?
Make a motion for approval per staff's comments.
Got a motion, a second on the table. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Congratulations on the signage. Last item on the agenda, HIMAT Capital LLC for Mequon Town Center 1. The applicant is seeking building and site plan amendment approval to allow for 8 new residential units as previously approved in July of 2022 for the property located at 11205 to 11315 North Port Washington Road and 5900 6048 West Mequon Road.
Yes, as stated in the report, many of you may recall this, but the planning commission approved the conversion of that second floor in the south building from commercial to residential. There's 8 units that's being proposed. It already complies with the PUD, which allowed up to 50 units on site, and they only had, I believe, 28 total, so they're still in compliance with that. At the time when this was approved, there was a traffic analysis done. Most of the time it was a benefit to the commercial users that the parking would go down. There was only one little area between 6 and 8, I think, on Saturdays where the demand would actually go up because at that time there was more residents around than there would be business. The traditional office users would be gone by then. So this was approved. Staff still recommends approval of it. We did add a condition in the last version, which we're remaining in this one, that the 8 individual tenants have one assigned parking stall in that indoor space that's located in the north building. We feel it's more appropriate to have these residential users in the north building and taking up space indoors versus taking up spaces near some of the commercial entities that are out there. So we recommend approval. And as Kim stated earlier, we did reconfigure our parking lot, so now we have ample outdoor parking for residents or guests that want to visit the site in our behind City Hall. That we have a shared parking agreement that allows that to happen. So, yeah, and plus there's an additional 50 stalls along Cedarburg Road and other places in the town center. So we still recommend approval of this, and we're supportive of it in accordance with the conditions in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Hawley?
I guess I do have one question. If the residents are going to park in the indoor parking in the north building, can you get to this building without going outside, or do you have to walk across the parking lot?
You have to go outside. It was more meant to just keep the inventory in the building versus near the commercial users.
Alderman Parrish.
Sure. Welcome to the applicant. Thank you for your intention to invest in the center. It's our focal point of the whole town center. Odd question. The dumpster was at some point moved to the corner of the lot, which was an excellent idea. But I don't recall it coming for any sort of approval. And since this is a site plan amendment, does it make sense to?
Well, that was one of the conditions we had previously added to the last approval. Was there was a couple site issues we wanted to address, and that came up at the time. So we took the initiative and we tried to get that done, and they did it kind of concurrently with the renovation. But then the renovation stopped, but then they kept going, and they did relocate the dumpster.
Good job. I just wanted to make sure it was compliant.
Yeah,
because they're buying it.
Yeah,
that's their expectation.
We thought the current location is a much better location. It's a little further away for some of the tenant or from some of the.
That's great.
But it looks good, I think.
Commissioner Barnes.
Just I support the plan, and I think it's a great improvement for the area. I think the one thing that, and I looked at the traffic report, and I guess still an outstanding little bit of a concern in the light of public comments that you hear of is the parking supply available despite the fact that there's some parking available in the city hall. So I guess the one thing that was going through my mind when reading this was, could there be some residents that really are not doing the commuting like is reported in the traffic study, that empty out during the midday and accommodate the retail, and instead they're parked there and they're there, and so I'm just a little concerned about potential conflict of parking needs.
Any way that you'd like to see that addressed, or do you want to know how he's going to address it? What concern do you want to?
And again, it's just purely an idea that crossed my mind, is there something about parking identifiers or something like that for residents where there's some rules
one of my
on
questions.
where they
That's
can
why
be
I crafted
located?
it. I had the same question. I wanted to know how you're going to identify resident parking and make sure that that was being enforced, as I know there's been some concern, right?
Certainly. And if I may comment, by no means do we have the perfect solution yet, but in interviewing tenants as part of our due diligence process, we realized that historically there were some concerns.
Is that mic on? I'm sorry. Is it green light lit? You gotta.
There you go.
There we go. Is that better?
There we go. Yep, and talk uncomfortably close to it so the people at home can hear you.
A little better?
Thank you. Yeah.
There we are. All right. First off, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight, and to address the question directly. As part of our due diligence process, we did interview all of the commercial tenants and had the opportunity to meet with many of the residential tenants. It sounds like many of the parking concerns that were there initially have been somewhat alleviated by way of the additional parking that's shared with the city, but it's not solved yet. And one of our intentions in this year ahead is to do some sort of more dedicated monitoring of the parking. Exactly how we administer it, I'm not positive yet, but our offices are here, and our intent is to have an individual employee from our office on site on a regular basis to either watch those parking stalls or work with the tenants to make sure that employees of the tenants are parking in the city shared lot as well. We recognize it's a concern. It's something we want to watch right out of the gates to make better.
That's great. And then while we're on the subject of parking, during construction, where are your construction vehicles going to park? I know you did some work in there previously, and there were boom trucks that were lined up and parked, in front of Collectivo. And I want to make sure that, as it's a community gathering space, we allow for that parking near the retail aspect of the gathering space, and we encourage construction crews to park close by, but far enough away to allow for that space to be used. Do you have a direction on what your plan is to address that?
I don't have a 100% answer down to the minutia of each individual, but I can commit to us working with city staff to make sure we're addressing where they should be parking, whether that's off-site or on the back of the site, while still permitting appropriate access.
Yeah, I mean, it would be beneficial for them to park in our parking lot behind City Hall, but it's be difficult for us to fully enforce, because unless we know which cars are driven by the workers, we're never going to be able to understand the ramifications of that. But I would just, if you want to make a amendment that have all the workers park in the City Hall parking lot, I think you could do that, but it's going to be, again, very difficult for us to enforce. We'll just have to, hopefully the owner will communicate that well to his workers and make sure that they do that, but it's a tough thing to enforce.
An amendment to do that, or even just an amendment to work with city staff to address parking for construction crews. And then my secondary question is, so you're taking the parking that was enclosed and you're making that resident parking. Well, I guess you've addressed it by stating that you're going to cover a lot of the concerns as it was coming forward, just from everyday parking and make sure that staff and everybody else is parked. Personal opinion, that lot is under parked. I know we have the overflow, but speaking from people that come out in the winter or inclement weather, I know those businesses are losing patrons during inclement weather because that parking is under parked and exactly on site. The overflow is there, the overflow is available, and we do have ample parking for a walkable community. But again, Mequon's still getting used to the idea of being a walkable community and getting from point A to point B. And if it's raining and slushy out and you're meeting several people, I know that people have chosen other locations. So just a little word of caution. I think, more than a question, you know, on that, just to make sure that, you know, as you do your due diligence on that, you kind of really work to try to find a solution for the internal parking as much as you possibly can.
We appreciate the feedback on that, and it's a top priority for us.
Great. Any other questions or a motion?
Move to approve with staff comments, per staff comments, with the addition of continuing to discuss parking, especially for construction.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll have one announcement. The next meeting is Monday, December 2nd, 2024 at 6 p.m.
We we combined our November, December meeting because we were having issues pushing the November one away from Thanksgiving, and then we could keep it, so we compressed them into one meeting, so.
Jack's house for Thanksgiving. Backup plan,
bring the food.
publicly notice it, and we'll see you there.
All in favor?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. That motion carries. Got a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.